Say yes. Okay.
Because he was talking to a colleague of his.
Okay, thank you.
You just said $500 should be.
I have a trial starting on Wednesday. Trying to parallel here, helping you guys.
But not always watching you guys.
No, just pulling it off.
All right. So test ready for safety?
Yes, Your Honor. Fields of last defense. This time call any other officer to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Of course.
Ma'am, please state your name for the record.
My name is Danielle Dawson.
Danielle, what is your occupation?
I'm a student at Midland Central University. I'm a senior.
Do you know why you're here?
Yes, sir. I'm being charged with murdering my friend, Vanessa Sullivan.
Did you murder her?
Absolutely not. It was an accident. She wasn't supposed to die.
What happened?
We were celebrating her birthday. Vanessa was turning 21, and she decided to go to this bar. Her favorite band was going to be playing, and she asked me to celebrate with her.
Did she ask you anything else?
She did say that I might have to be the designated driver, but she wasn't sure.
Judge, you want to say?
No problem.
All right, go ahead.
And this is not being offered for the truth of the matter, sir. The effect of that it had on the listener and their subsequent actions.
Your Honor, the state has a good faith belief that without an offer of proof as to what these subsequent actions are, that this is in fact being offered for the truth of the matter today.
Again, Ms. Dawson, did Vanessa Sullivan ask you anything else?
She said that I might have to be the designated driver, but she wasn't sure.
Or did Vanessa Sullivan mention you being the designated driver any other time after that?
There were 2 weeks leading up to her, between the time that we talked and the time of her birthday, and she didn't say anything about it.
Walk the court through what happened on her birthday, what you did.
I got to Chucky's at around 2 o'clock. I had an interview earlier that day that just really gone badly. So I decided to just sit and wait and clear my head for Vanessa to get there. And I talked to JJ, the bartender, and it made me feel a lot better about how badly my interview had gone.
Do you remember what time Vanessa and Taylor arrived?
Yes, sir. They got there at 7, a little after 7.
And what did you all do after they arrived?
We all went and sat at a table very near the stage. And we were having a good time. We were talking, dancing to the music, and everybody had drinks.
So you were drinking.
Yes, sir.
Why were you drinking?
It was Vanessa's birthday, and no one had said anything to me about being a designated driver. And I even heard Taylor say that Taylor was going to drive. So
Judge,
I
Your Honor,
didn't.
your say?
Like I mean?
Sure.
Again, this is not being offered for the truth of the matter, sir, but the effect that it had on Ms. Dawson and her subsequent actions, which were, if only can offer proof, were to continue drinking.
Your Honor, I stand by my objection that the state has a good faith belief that this is being offered for the truth of the matter. In order to prove that it was not in fact Ms. Dawson's fault that evening, that it is in fact not Ms. Dawson's fault for the events that occurred on September 24, 2010.
Again, Ms. Dawson, so you were drinking.
Yes, sir.
And why were you drinking?
No one told me that I was going to be the designated driver, and I even heard Taylor say that Taylor was going to drive. So I wasn't concerned about it.
So what happened next, Daniel?
Well, we started ordering drinks. We were just dancing and talking, having a good time. I decided to let Taylor and Vanessa catch up, so I walked away, and I went to the bar and I had a drink with Jamie.
Danielle, do you remember how many drinks you had that evening after Vanessa and Taylor arrived?
Yes, I had 5.
Now, at what point did you decide that it was time for you and Vanessa and Taylor to leave the bar?
It was around 12:45. I was looking for Taylor and Vanessa, and Taylor was stumbling around, and Vanessa had her head down on the table, and so that's when I realized it was time for us to go.
So what did you do?
Well, I got everybody together and led everybody to the car, to Vanessa's car in the lot.
And then?
Taylor started yelling at me about Vanessa's curfew, and I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know Vanessa had a curfew or anything. And she was saying that there was no way that we were going to make it home in time. And Taylor was just so upset and so frantic.
Your Honor, this testimony has lapsed into a narrative.
I'm sorry.
This testimony has lapsed into a narrative.
All right, sustain.
Ms. Dawson, based on what you saw, how was Taylor Hodson acting?
He was yelling and just being very frantic. So I told him I would get them home in 10 minutes. And that's when I got everybody in the car and we started to drive away.
But why did you say that?
I just wanted Taylor to calm down. He was just yelling and slurring, and I couldn't understand what he was saying, and I just wanted him to calm down.
Okay, so let's move forward, Danielle. You're all in the car. What happened?
So I started driving, and it was pouring rain. It was just coming down really hard. And so I was trying to navigate Canyon Road, but it's pitch black pretty much. There are no lights on Canyon Road anywhere. The street curves without warning. I couldn't see a guardrail, and there are these trees that are really
Objection,
close.
Your Honor, this testimony has lapsed into a narrative.
Okay, same.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Dawson, what did you see as you were driving down Canyon Road?
The street curves without warning. There are trees very close to it. There's nothing to protect the drivers on the street. There's no anything.
Was that your only problem in driving the vehicle?
No. Taylor just would not stop screaming and yelling. No matter how many times I asked, he just kept hollering and kicking my seat. And I'm trying to navigate. It's dark, it's pouring rain, and he just would not cooperate at all.
Okay, now after Taylor Hobson was distracted, what happened?
I was trying to navigate the street, but this curve came up that I couldn't see. There was no warning. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw something running towards the road. It looked like a deer. So I swerved to avoid it. But when I tried to get back on the road, I lost control of the car. And it just started spinning and spinning. And then we hit something. And everything stopped.
Do you remember what happened next?
I started screaming for Taylor and Vanessa. And Taylor responded, and I jumped out of the car to try and help. But Vanessa didn't say anything. She was already gone.
Danielle, did help arrive?
Yeah, somebody called the ambulance, and they got there, and they came to try and help Taylor and Vanessa, and the police arrived too.
Now, after the police arrived, what happened?
I tried to explain what happened. I was trying to tell the officer what happened, but he didn't listen to anything I was trying to say.
How do you know that?
District Attorney Sullivan showed up. And I tried to tell her I was so sorry. But she didn't want to hear it. She just made Officer Foster do these tests.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Witnesses testifying based on what they saw, their lay opinion, not testifying to the mindset of District Attorney Sullivan or Officer Foster.
Your Honor, the witness testified as to Ms. Sullivan, District Attorney Sullivan, making Officer Foster do something without any foundation as to how she can qualify such an explanation. This is in fact speculation.
The objection sustained.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
Granted.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, after District Attorney Sullivan arrived on the scene, Danielle, what happened?
She was just yelling and screaming and blaming me. Like I'd done this on purpose. Like this was all my fault. And she said to Officer Foster that he should make me confess.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, this is an excited utterance.
Your Honor, in that case, I would like to withdraw my objection to hearsay and raise a new objection as to more prejudicial than probative under 403 grounds. May I be heard? Your Honor, hearing these statements about Vanessa Sullivan's mother asking Officer Foster to find more evidence for her murder conviction can grossly mislead the jury into believing that that she does in fact have an undue influence in today's case, when in fact earlier we did determine that this was in fact more prejudicial than it is probative.
If I may.
Sure.
Earlier, the court ruled that Officer Foster testifying as to what District Attorney Sullivan did or did not say at the time may have been more prejudicial than probative. However, the witness testifying to what happened after District Attorney Sullivan arrived and the testimony and the test that she was subjected to is definitely more prejudicial. It's important for the jury to understand how the evidence that the state is using in today's case was received.
Present.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, Danielle, after you were submitted to these tests by Officer Foster, what happened next?
Officer Foster just put me in handcuffs and threw me in the back of this police car and took me to the station.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination now. Good afternoon, Ms. Nelson. I'm just going to be asking you a few questions about September 24th, 2010, okay?
Okay.
Now, you say that you arrived at Chuggy's Bar at 2 p.m. on September 24th, right?
Yes.
You arrived after a job interview, as you stated, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you got to Chuggy's Bar, you immediately started drinking alcohol, didn't you?
Not in, well, yes, I had 3 whiskey and ginger ale, and I had 3 whiskey and ginger ale, so I waited there for about 5 hours, from 2 to 7.
Now, Ms. Dawson, on top of those 3 whiskey and ginger ales, you actually had a shot of alcohol with Jordan, the bartender, didn't you?
Yes,
You also, on top of that shot of alcohol, had a beer, right?
I chased my shot of beer.
Ms. Dawson, is it your testimony that you did not have beer with your lunch that afternoon?
Your Honor, just want to objectively just answer the question.
Okay. Overall.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Dawson, is it your testimony today that you did not drink beer with your lunch that afternoon?
I just said I did, yes.
So it's your testimony that you were chasing that shot with beer on the afternoon of September 24th, 2010?
I had a beer, and shot, and whiskey and ginger.
Ms. Dawson, you created an affidavit before you come into court today, right?
Yes,
You were told to put all relevant and truthful information into this affidavit, correct?
yes,
You were told that you could make any changes to this affidavit up until 30 minutes before trial today, right?
yes.
Permission to approach the opposing counsel? Permission to approach the witness stand? Ms. Dawson, did I just hand you your affidavit?
Yes,
Is that your name on the front page?
yes,
Is that your signature on the back page?
yes,
And would you agree that this is a fair and accurate copy of your affidavit?
yes.
Now, Ms. Dawson, I would like to turn your attention to line 78 on page 3. If you could please read along with me as I read aloud, okay? I wasn't sure though, so I think I only had 3 whiskey and ginger ales and 1 beer while I sat around and read for most of the afternoon. Did I read that correctly, Ms. Dawson?
Yes.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor? So, Ms. Dawson, after these 5 drinks that you had in the afternoon, you met with Vanessa Sullivan at 7 p.m., correct?
Yes, Vanessa got there and Taylor got there at 7.
The 3 of you sat down at your table to have dinner, right?
Yes, correct.
And when you sat down to dinner, Ms. Dawson, you ordered another alcoholic drink, correct?
Yes, I ordered a whiskey and rocks.
And after you had that whiskey on the rocks after dinner, you went back to the bar to see Jordan James, right?
That is correct.
You had another shot of alcohol with Jordan James at that time, right?
Yes.
And it was at that point that you had beer again, right, Ms. Dawson?
I chased that shot of beer, yes.
And you went back to your table to visit Vanessa and Taylor, right?
Yes.
And what followed was more alcoholic drinks, right, Ms. Dawson?
Yes, I had another drink if that's what you need.
You received a complimentary Jack and Ginger from the bar, right, Ms. Dawson?
Correct.
And you were drinking that Jack and Ginger, right?
Correct.
After that, the band came on stage, right?
Yes.
And you got a chance to meet the band at intermission, didn't you?
Yes.
And while you were backstage with the band, You were drinking then as well, right?
Right, I had my Jack and Ginger.
So you were drinking alcohol when you were backstage with the band, right?
Right, the same Jack and Ginger from earlier, but yes, I was drinking it.
And then you went back to your table after intermission, right?
Correct.
It was at that point that Mr. Hobson got up on stage, correct?
Right,
Now you noticed that Mr. Hobson was acting pretty drunk, right?
that's what I thought, yes.
And it was at that point, when you saw Mr. Hobson up on stage, that you came to the conclusion that you would be the most likely candidate to drive, right?
Yes, that's what I noticed.
Now, Ms. Dawson, after you came to this conclusion, though, you ordered yet another alcoholic drink, didn't you?
Yes,
And that was a tequila sunrise, right?
right,
And you ended up leaving the bar at 12:45, correct?
after Taylor got off stage, yes, we got,
Vanessa needed to be home at 1 o'clock, right?
right. I didn't know that till we were getting ready to leave, but yes, that is true.
Well, as you were ready to leave, Ms. Dawson, the band, Chatterbox, actually decided to buy your entire group a round of shots, right?
Yeah, they bought everybody a shot. Everybody was still there.
And everybody was going to take a shot of alcohol, correct?
That is correct.
Including you, Ms. Dawson?
I asked the server to give me water.
Well, Ms. Dawson, when you took that shot of what you thought was water, you felt a burn in your throat, didn't you?
I did, but I thought that was heartburn. I had some food earlier, but I did feel the burn. I did feel burn when I drank the water, but I thought it was water. I hoped it was water.
Objection, Your Honor. Motion to strike is speculative as to the fact that she thought it was heartburn.
Your Honor, if I may, the witness can testify as to what they thought at the time they did some speculation.
The motion to strike is overruled.
Your Honor.
Well, Ms. Hobson, or Ms. Dawson, sorry. Water doesn't usually burn when you drink it, does it?
No, but if I was having heartburn, so that it doesn't have anything to do with what is happening currently.
Well, just specifically to water, Ms. Dawson, yes or no? Does it burn when you drink it?
No, not usually, but if I was having heartburn, then it would.
Well, you never clarified with anybody as to why you might have felt that burn, did you?
No, I wasn't sure. No.
So you never asked anybody why you would feel such a burn,
Your Honor,
right?
this is on Mr. Jack, asking answer.
That's it.
Your Honor.
So you ended up leaving the bar around 12:45, right?
That is correct.
You were going to be the one driving home, correct?
Yes.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, Vanessa needed to get home at 1 o'clock, right?
Right, but I didn't know that until 12:45.
And you said you were going to make that drive home to Vanessa's house in 10 minutes, right?
That's what I told Taylor.
Now, Taylor Hobson told you he was concerned about that, right?
Yes,
Because the drive usually takes longer than 10 minutes, doesn't it, Ms. Dawson?
that is true.
So you were planning on speeding home that evening, right?
No, I told Taylor that because Taylor was being frantic and yelling and screaming. I didn't plan to speed or meticulously plot to speed. I just told Taylor that so that Taylor would not be so frantic.
Ms. Dawson, you pulled out a radar detector when you got into Vanessa Sullivan's car, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
Is it your testimony today that you did not pull out a radar detector when you got into Vanessa Sullivan's car? Ms. Dawson, may I have a moment, Your Honor? Ms. Dawson, you created an affidavit in today's case, didn't you?
Yes,
You were told to put all relevant and accurate information into this affidavit, right?
yes,
You were told to be completely truthful in this affidavit, right?
yes.
Permission to approach with the counsel. Permission to approach the district. Awesome, I just re-handed you your affidavit.
Yes,
Please just look to the front and back and make sure that that is your name and your signature.
yes,
This is in fact a fair and accurate copy of your affidavit, right?
yes.
And I'd like to refer you to lines 160 and through 161, and I'd like you to read along with me as I read aloud, okay?
Yes.
Not one to back down from a challenge, I remembered the radar detector in Vanessa's car, pulled it out of the glove compartment, turned it on, and took off. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Permission to approach the witness and retrieve the affidavit. So, Ms. Austin, you were planning on speeding home that evening, right?
Objection, Your Honor, asking answer.
Okay. You took Canyon Road home. You were
Yes.
trying to take Canyon Road, right? From what you noticed, Canyon Road was dark, right?
Yes,
You noticed the Canyon Road had virtually no lights.
That's correct.
You noticed the Canyon Road also had a lot of curves, didn't you?
Yes,
It was also raining very heavily on Canyon Road that night, right?
it was.
And while you were driving in these conditions, you were speeding, weren't you?
Yes,
And Taylor Hobson asked you to slow down, right?
Taylor Hobson was screaming and yelling, and somewhere in there was a slow down. Yeah.
Vanessa even asked you to slow down, right?
Pressure on your side?
Well,
Pressure on.
Vanessa asked you to slow down too, didn't she?
yes, again, it was competing with Taylor screaming and radio blasting, but I believe she did say that to me.
She said she would call her father and say that they would be late, didn't she?
Vanessa called her father, yes.
And while Vanessa was on the phone with her father, that's when the accident happened, right?
Yes,
And Ms. Dawson, you say that you swerved because you saw a deer on Canyon Road, right?
yes.
Ms. Dawson, you never mentioned this deer to Officer Foster.
Officer Foster never asked me about the deer.
You never,
Officer Foster never asked me about anything about the accident.
Ms. Dawson, you never tried to explain yourself to Officer Foster, did you?
I never said anything to Officer Foster, never asked me anything, just asked me to do these tests.
Well, earlier on direct examination, you mentioned that you were trying to explain yourself to Officer Foster, right?
I did talk to Officer Foster. I was talking to him, but he never at any point asked me what happened. He just asked me to do these tests.
Ms. Dawson, at that point when you were speaking to Officer Foster, trying to explain to him what happened, you never mentioned a deer, yes or no?
No design to accident action. Pressure on.
Yes or
No.
no? You never mentioned a deer to Vanessa Sullivan's mother when she arrived and you were explaining yourself to her, right?
Vanessa, no. Mrs. Sullivan was screaming at me, blaming me. No, I didn't say anything about it.
You never mentioned a deer to anyone that night when you crashed Vanessa's car, did you?
No one asked me. No one asked me what happened. No one asked me about my perspective at any point. So no, I didn't say anything.
You never tried to explain yourself to anyone, yes or no?
I didn't say anything about it here.
No other questions, ma'am.
Ms. Dawson, on direct examination, opposing counsel asked you if you brought a radar detector into the vehicle into the speed. Was it your radar detector?
No, it was in Vanessa's car already.
Objection had a relevance as to the ownership of the radar detector.
All right, fine.
Go ahead.
For the jury to not understand who owned the radar detector would be more prejudicial to the program.
We have your interruption. We're here to examine Ms. Dawson's actions in today's case. Who owned the radar detector that evening doesn't make any relevant fact more or less likely.
Hello.
Me and Daniel, whose radar detector was it?
It was Vanessa's. It was in her car and the girl from Harvard when we got in.
Do you know if those are illegal?
No, I don't know if they are or not. I don't know.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Now, you mentioned that you didn't know that radar detectors were illegal, right?
Well, they may be. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be difficult. I don't remember I don't remember exactly about the legality of it. And they may be. I'm not saying they aren't. I'm not sure now currently.
So you're saying you're not sure, Ms. Dawson? I just want to clarify.
I'm not sure today currently. I'm not sure today currently. No.
There's no further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense would like to call on the defendant to testify. Could you please introduce yourself?
Well, sure. My name is London Jedid. I've been, but everybody calls me London. And currently unemployed, live in a small cane just outside live in a small house just outside Cane Road in Midlands.
And Mr. Bennett, can you tell us why you're here today?
Well, sure. I guess you could call me an eyewitness to what happened that night with Vanessa Sullivan and defending the gay state with Dan Dawson.
Now, Mr. Bennett, let's talk about that day. What were you doing on the night of September 24th?
Well, sure. I was my daddy. He was a painter, right? And so I picked it up from him, so I was out there painting, to be honest with you. And, cause it was about to rain that night, I really wanted to capture the colors of the rain, so I was out there painting, and, they called for painting, they called for rain they called for rain on there.
And what, if anything, happened while you were painting?
Well, I mean, like I said, they were calling for rain, it started to drizzle, and it started to really pour down, and that's when my dog, Peaches, she's a little chihuahua, she noticed off the side of the road that she started looking at it intently. She was really like looking at the road, and she started barking like she'd seen a deer or something, because I mean, she sees deer all the time.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Sustained.
Motion to strike the testimony.
Granted.
Mr. Bennett, can you, once again, just explain what you were doing, what you saw while you were painting?
Well, so like I said, Peach started barking at the road, it was raining, and that's when I noticed the car coming down the road.
And what, if anything, did you see while you were staring at the car?
Well, I'll be honest with you, going a little bit too fast for the road, because I mean, Canyon Road's pretty dangerous in my opinion. And at first I noticed it was going okay at first, and then it started to swerve a little bit, and it spun around like a top, and that's when it hit a tree.
Now, Mr. Bennett, how long have you been living on Canyon Road?
Well, the Bennett's owned that piece of property for years now, and I mean, to be honest with you, my granddad, Lyndon Bennett, the second, he helped build that.
And do you know how far your house is from the road?
So it's about 100 feet. Me and my cousin, we all used to play football on the road, on my yard.
Can you describe Canyon Road?
So, all right, well, take the hardest racetrack I can think of, right, and add a whole bunch of curves to it, turn off the lights, because I'm the only light that's on that road. Put some trees on there, some wildlife, and you got Canyon Road. It's pretty dangerous, to be honest with y'all. I've seen a couple accidents on it already. I mean, in fact, a couple of
Objection, Your Honor, relevance to the previous accidents this witness has seen.
Anything on your honor?
Yes. Oh.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I make an offer of proof, this one is just going to testify that he has previously seen accidents on this road. All this is doing is qualifying the answer that he thought the road was dangerous.
Your Honor, whether or not this witness has seen previous accidents on this road doesn't make anything more or less likely in today's case. What's in question today is the defendant's accidents, not any previous accidents, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
It's our contention that the road was, in fact, dangerous that night. Mr. Bennett's already testified that he lived on the road for a number of years. He's testified that he's seen accidents, and his opinion that the road was dangerous.
All right, overruled.
Mr. Bennett, can you please restate your answer?
Sure. Like I said, I've seen accidents on the road before. I mean, in fact, a couple kids died a couple years back from an accident.
Objection, Your Honor, more prejudicial than probative as to the couple kids dying on this road previously.
Overruled.
Mr. Bennett, once again, can you just restate your answer?
Well, sure. I've seen accidents on the road, and like I said, a couple kids died. To be honest with y'all, I think the road's pretty dangerous. They need to do some fixing right now.
Okay, Mr. Bennett, let's go back to the accident.
Sure.
What, if anything, happened after you saw the collision?
Well, I called the police and I told them that's what I seen. I saw the accident. And I grabbed my poncho because it was raining, of course, and I ran outside to see if anybody was okay, see if everybody was okay with the accident. That's when I saw somebody standing outside the road, on the road. I didn't know who it was just yet, but I knew it to be Miss Dan Dawson now. And then I saw some people in the car. I mean, honestly, my heart dropped because I saw Hoppy. I mean, I know him, Taylor. Excuse me, I call him Hoppy. Taylor Hoppy.
Objection, Your Honor, narrative.
Okay, go ahead, next question.
Mr. Bennett, who did you see when you arrived at the accident?
Okay, like I said, I saw Mr. Dan Dawson. I saw Taylor Hobson in the car, known him for years, so I knew him off the bat. And I saw Vanessa Sullivan, and honestly, she didn't look too good.
Now, when you saw Miss Dawson, did you say anything to her?
Well, sure, I just wanted to see if she was all right. She was in an accident. And as I got closer, I noticed that her hair was bleeding a little bit. Now, it was raining. I couldn't see it. It was dark. Didn't know where it was bleeding from, but it was definitely bleeding. And, I mean, other than that, she looked pretty shook from the accident, but pretty alert. I didn't see her. She wasn't drunk or anything.
Now, Mr. Dawson, did you see a deer that evening?
No, but like I said, Peaches started barking at the road. And Peaches is a certified hunting chihuahua, so she knows when she smells a deer. And,
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Sustained.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
Granted.
Mr. Bennett, one final question.
sure.
During your interaction with Miss Dawson, how did she seem?
Like I said, she didn't seem drunk. She just seemed shook from the accident.
Thank you for that. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross, Your Honor. May I proceed? Mr. Bennett, I'm going to be asking you a few questions about the night in question.
Sure.
Now, you've lived on Canyon Road your entire life, correct?
Pretty much, like I said, Ben's owned that piece of property for centuries.
So you know that the speed limit on this road is 35 miles per hour, correct?
Yep, and I told them they needed to change that, but nobody listens to me.
However, the speed limit is 35 miles per hour, correct?
Right, you're right.
Now, I want to talk to you about the events of September 24th, 2010.
Sure.
Now, you mentioned that you were painting, right?
Right, like I said, I picked it up from my dad. Always lived in pain.
Now, you were painting a picture of the road, correct?
Yeah.
So therefore, you were looking at the road, right?
Right, if I was painting a picture of the road, I'm definitely looking at it.
So just to clarify, you did not see a deer on that road, right?
No, I mean, deers are pretty fast. They can, blink across the eye. You blink, you're not going to see it, so I might have blinked.
However, you did not see a deer at any time that night, right?
No, I can't say I saw a deer.
Now, moments after you looked at the road, you saw a car careening down it, correct?
Right.
And you thought this car was going too fast.
Yeah, it looked like it was going too fast, especially because it was raining out there. I mean, I seen accidents on there all the time, so it looked like it was going a little too fast.
So you thought it was going too fast for the weather, right?
Definitely.
You thought this car was going above the speed limit, correct?
Yeah, probably, but I didn't have one of those, police radar things, so I can't tell you for sure if it was going over or going under. I don't know.
Is it your testimony today that you did not think this car was going above the speed limit?
Oh, sure, it was probably going, but it looked like it was going pretty fast.
So you thought this car was speeding, right?
Yeah, for the weather, going a little too fast.
Moments after you saw this car, you saw it jerk to the right, correct?
Yeah, like I said,
And then back to the left,
right, I started swerving and then spun around like a top.
started swerving, and then it ultimately hit a tree.
I saw it hit a tree, I got closer, and I thought I also hit a pole as well.
Now, after you witnessed this, you called 911, right?
Definitely.
When you called 911, you told them you just witnessed a crazy driver go flying off the road, right?
I don't remember if I saw it say all that, but I definitely told them I saw an accident.
Is it your testimony today that you do not remember saying that?
I don't, it was a couple of years back, I don't remember saying all that.
Is there anything that can refresh your memory?
Sure, if you can bring up, what's it called, affidavit?
Yes. May I approach the witness room?
Yeah, you're right, I did say it was a crazy driver. Yeah, and also, I complained about the road being a little bit too dangerous too, but I will admit, I did say it was a crazy driver on the road.
So just to be clear, when you called 911, you told them you just witnessed a crazy driver go flying off the road, right?
Yeah,
Now, it was moments after you called 911 that you headed to the crash.
sure.
When you got to the crash, you saw the defendant there, right?
Right, I saw the defendant and I saw the people inside the car.
Now, the defendant was muttering a few words, right?
Yeah, she was talking to herself. I heard a couple of things.
She was saying Jack and Ginger, correct?
Right, and like I said, I didn't see who was in the car just yet, so I thought she was talking about the people in the car, but she was saying that. Like I said, I got closer and I saw it was Hoppy and so.
Regardless of what you thought, she was saying Jack and Ginger, right?
Sure.
Now, you also mentioned earlier that the defendant did not seem drunk to you, right?
She didn't seem drunk to me, no.
However, what she did say to you was, "So stupid. Why did I let them talk me into driving when I knew I was tipsy," correct?
Right.
There's no further questions, Your Honor.
You, Jack?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Now, Mr. Bennett, we know that you've lived on Canyon Road for a very long time.
All my life.
Do deer frequent that area regularly?
Yeah, like I said, I go hunting all the time out there because there's a lot of deer out there, so yeah, there's a lot of deer out there.
And can you please explain the accident that you were talking about prior with the other kids?
Oh, well, the kids.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of my examination.
Stay.
Just one more time, Mr. Bennett. Are deer frequent in that area?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Stay.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Bennett, opposing counsel brought up on cross-examination that you said you saw a crazy driver.
Right.
Could you please explain that statement?
Well, I mean, I saw a crazy driver. I didn't really know what was going on really, because they were going a little bit too fast and they ran a little bit too hard. So it was a pretty crazy situation, so I called it a crazy driver.
Thank you for that. No further questions, Your Honor.
May the witness please? May the witness please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This would now like to call Mr. Leslie Gomes to stand. Can you please state your name and occupation for the record?
Yes, my name is Leslie Roman, and I'm the expert engineer, expert accident reconstruction.
Now, what exactly do you do at Expert Accident Reconstruction?
Well, basically what we do is we take the evidence from a fatal crash report with a reconstruction accident, we analyze the evidence, do a couple of site visits, and try to find the most likely cause of the accident.
Okay, now before we move forward, can you detail your educational background for the report?
Sure, I got my bachelor's in civil engineering at University of Texas at Austin. I've studied traffic engineering in densely populated areas such as France, more urban areas such as San Francisco, California, and even the rural areas such as Peoria, Illinois. I consider myself to be a student in the field. For 5 years, I also worked with the Midlands Department of Transportation.
Now, when you work in accident reconstruction, do you rely on reliable principles and methods?
Absolutely. We try to keep our firm up to date with all the most reliable principles and methods in the field, and we apply those things, always constantly changing our minds to adopt new practices and processes.
And did you apply those in today's case?
Yes.
Now, how are you involved in today's case?
Well, I analyzed, talked about the defense, to analyze the fatal crash change report, see the consistency of it, make a couple of site visits, and find the most likely cause of the accident on September 24th with Daniel Dawson.
Now, what was the most likely cause of your accident?
Well, after looking at the fatal crash change report, they reconstruct the accident, and we, after doing a couple of site visits, we saw the path of the car and how the car exited the road on the east embankment and rutted in the grass about 144 feet. This evasive maneuver the car took was consistent with avoiding some type of large object. Like a deer, that area is highly populated with deer.
Objection, Your Honor. Max foundation. Your Honor, we can lay the foundation.
Okay, go ahead.
How are you familiar with the area being heavily populated with deer?
Well, a couple ways. Well, 5 years in 1993 and through 1998, I worked with the Midlands Department of Transportation. And this is one of our red flag areas, and I submitted 7 reports on Canyon Road. On top of the site visit I did 10 years later in today's case. And what I've done is I saw the sign signaling that this is an area that's highly populated with deer. So the signage is one way. Another way, this is
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Hello.
So the signage is one way that I know this place to be highly populated with deer, which is why we have those signs letting the drivers know. Another way is that I take my family here every year to do deer watching.
Now, you said you you analyzed the fatal crash change report. What, if anything, did you find within the report?
Well, there are 2 things I found, and this is very interesting because I rarely disagree with fatal crash team reconstruction accidents and do a very decent job. The first thing is that they grossly underestimated the danger of Canyon Road. And secondly, they overestimated the speed in which the defendant was driving.
Now, you said that they overestimated the speed and grossly underestimated the danger of the road. Could you explain that?
Yes. Well, typically, when you want to find the speed of an individual prior to an accident, there's a small black box right underneath the driver's seat, and it's called an event data record. What happens is you will pull that event data record and you will plug it into the machine, and it will give you the information such as the speed that the driver was traveling, the position of the pedals, and the position of the brakes as well. Typically, you will retrieve this black box, steel type material. You retrieve this insert material and know all the information. Well, when I went to do the vehicle description report, this was removed. So Officer Foster and the fatal crash team had to rely on a formula. I analyzed that formula as an outdated formula. to understand the speed in which the defendant is driving. We keep our expert firm up
Objection,
to-
Your Honor, narrative.
Ask a question. Thank you.
Yes. Now, actually, that was sufficient. I want to move on to the other thing that you had said about the underestimation of the dangers of Canyon Road. Could you explain that?
I actually brought an aid to demonstrate.
Your Honor, permission for the witness to step down and make use of the demonstrative?
Your Honor, before the witness does that, may I first see the document?
Oh, sure.
I'm not familiar.
Okay.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to have to object on the grounds of, first off, I'm sorry, this document, there are very many words in this document. Those are hearsay statements that are being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. The opposing counsel wanted to use a diagram that did not have any words on it for the witness to interpret. That'd be okay, but in this case, there are words on there, specifically the word that says vehicle swerves to avoid a deer and exit the right side of the doorway, or I'm sorry, of the roadway. That's hearsay, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may. First, to objecting to the use of this demonstrative, this has been shown to opposing counsel. There was no objections then, and if there are objections now to the hearsay on within the document, these are the witness's own words. He can qualify these conclusions and words when he comes up to speak about the demonstrative.
This is a demonstrative was shown to opposing counsel in its current form,
Yes.
and no objections were made. The motion was made prior to this.
No.
Okay, the objections are.
Your Honor, just to clarify, if I'm to be heard, the demonstrative was shown during captain's meeting. I wasn't at the captain's meeting, only 2 people go to captain's meeting. This is the first that I'm seeing with this document, and this document is still hearsay. This document isn't included in the case packet. And in fact, if we allow this to enter into evidence, it's going to mislead the jury into thinking that there really was a deer there, when in fact, prosecution has a good faith belief that this witness cannot testify that.
Your Honor.
Okay, it's overruled at this time.
Witness.
It's overruled at this time. You're free to renew the objection if something comes out during the course of the testimony related to that specific statement. Understand?
Your Honor, may the witness step down?
Yes.
Could you please explain what you meant earlier about the dangers of Canyon Road?
Yes. Canyon Road is a very narrow road. One of the first things you notice is there's no lights on Canyon Road. Secondly, there's no sign letting the driver know there's a curb ahead. So there's poor signage on Canyon Road. Just a mile north of where the accident occurred, there's no sign indicating what the speed limit is on this road, which is another concern that I had with Canyon Road. And near both edges of pavement, there are lines of trees that are cut very rough. So this means once the driver, whether they were a prudent citizen or not, catches the curb by surprise because there's no signage letting them know there's a curb, they run the risk of going off that embankment into a steep drop-off, and they cannot avoid striking a tree. So due to those things, this road causes a serious concern to me as a student of traffic engineering. And finally, on top of all of those things, this road is highly populated with deer. So you have pedestrians driving down this road, unaware of the speed, unaware there's a curve they're approaching, negotiates this curve by surprise. There's a steep drop-off, there's no guardrails to protect that driver, and they cannot avoid striking the tree. These are all reasons that this road is an accident waiting to happen. And I submitted a report several years before stating such.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. That's to the previous report.
Sustain.
Motion to strike?
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may just reach some clarification.
Okay.
If I heard the witness correctly, he said that he submitted a report, not that there was not any statements that were in the report. So what part of that is hearsay?
Have you heard, Your Honor?
Sure.
The witness did say that he submitted a report, but he said he also tied in the testimony that he just gave to that report. That's still hearsay.
Sustain.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
Okay.
So, Mr. Roman, could you detail your concerns with the road currently that wasn't in your report previously?
Yes, I actually brought a visual aid to help.
Mr. Roman, what are we looking at here?
Well, typically, one of our processes when we do a site visit is we conduct a road risk analysis. First, a checklist of my observations. I collect this data, and it's used to determine what we'll do next in any event where we're analyzing what happened in an accident. And along my notes that I made about the road, there's a color continuum from the least concern to critical concern. So the color pretty much demonstrates how my level of concern was raised as I analyzed Canyon Road. First, we saw that there were no lights. Then I saw there was poor signage. Then I saw that once the driver negotiates the curve, by surprise, there's no guardrail protecting. And the proximity of trees makes it unavoidable to strike a tree once going off the embankment. And then the dense deer population on a poor lit road makes this an accident waiting to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Let's take your seat. Now, Mr. Roman, you were also called to analyze the probability of there being a deer in the road that night. How probable is that?
It's highly probable, considering the density of the population, the high forestry area, also considering the evasive maneuver of the car. It was consistent with avoiding some type of large object. This had to be a moving object, otherwise, when the fatal crash team arrived, the object would have still been present in the road. So that's consistent with some type of moving object or forestry animal like a deer that we know to be in this area.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Just a brief moment, Your Honor, before we begin. A motion to reconstruct the demonstrative, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Roman, you didn't arrive at the accident until 18 days after it happened, isn't that right?
That is correct. As soon as I was notified, I put a team on staff and we headed over.
Right. And you didn't observe the vehicle at the police impound lot until 18 days after it happened, isn't that right?
As soon as I was notified, when we conducted our investigation, that's correct.
Now, Mr. Roman, you would agree that Officer Foster had a significant advantage in being present immediately after the accident, wouldn't you?
And being a part of the fatal crash team, absolutely. However, there were some things that had to highlight. There were premier concerns that were not in the report. So it's not in any way to diminish the fatal crash team's effort.
Right, but regardless, you would agree that Officer